Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope everyone can hear me. Yes?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Judge.
Excellent, thank you. My goodness, I just lost the screen. Okay, perfect. All right, good afternoon. My name is Judge Lal, and this is going to be the Fulton State Expedited Accusation Calendar for today, October 22nd at 2 p.m. This is a list of criminal misdemeanor cases in which the individuals were recently arrested and booked at the Fulton County Jail. Upon being booked, the Solicitor General's office, which is the prosecutor, has formally accused the cases. Hence, this will be the defendant's initial appearance before a judicial officer. When I call your case, I will let you know what is your case number, the charges brought against you, appoint counsel to represent you, as well as set a bond if one has not been set. For certain cases, they may be reset to another court date, and that would be November 3rd at 9 a.m. in courtroom G33 at 160 Pryor Street. So we're going to begin with courtroom 2. Who do we have there, please?
Good afternoon, Judge Law. We have position number 2 and position number 3, Mr. Melvin Bruton, and he has a private attorney with him.
All right, good afternoon, sir. What's your name, please?
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Alan Parker. How are you, ma'am?
Doing well, thank you. Mr. Parker, your client has 2 separate cases which have been accused, and let me just go through the information. The first one is 22 CR 007119B. Again, I'll repeat, the accusation number is 22 CR 007119B as in Bob, alleged to with a misdemeanor offense of battery, domestic violence as a subsequent conviction or from July 12th, 2020. The second case is 22 CR 007120B. And Mr. Parker, that is a misdemeanor charge of battery, domestic violence as a first offense from September 6, 2021. So I'm not quite sure about the order of the charges. Maybe the prosecutor can enlighten me on that. But Mr. Bruton, you've been advised of your right to remain silent. Well, I don't think I have. I just need to let everyone know. First of all, folks, if you are charged with a misdemeanor offense or offenses, and this goes to Mr. Bruton as well as to everyone behind him, that you have a right to remain silent. Anything you say in open court, your statements can and will be used against you. This entire Zoom recording is being recorded as well as live streamed. So please be mindful, don't say anything at all. And you have a right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, we will appoint counsel from the public defenders or conflict defense list. So going back to Mr. Bruton, who's our prosecutor, Ms. Salette?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Salette, can you explain why the 2020 is a battery family violence based on a prior conviction or a prior forcible felony conviction, and yet the 2021 charge is a battery family violence as a first offense? So I was a little perplexed about that.
Yes, Your Honor. It's listed that way in case manager, but my accusation that I filed says battery family violence first offense on 22 CR 007119B. So both of his charges on the calendar today are first offense battery family violence cases.
Okay, all right. And Ms. Roberts, may I have Mr. Bruton's priors, please?
Yeah, 7 cycles, 4 out of Washington, 1 out of Maryland, 2 out of Georgia. Last arrest was from October 15th of this year for a hit and run out of DeKalb County. That case appears to be open. He has a 2014 assault conviction out of Washington and a 2009 DWI conviction out of Maryland, and nothing further.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Salette, and what are you asking in terms of bond for both these cases?
Yes, Your Honor. On the position number 2, that offense happened in July of 2020 with victim Lamar Janae Vassar. That's LamarJanae Vassar, Vasser. In July of 2020, officers were called out to 1102 West Chase Lane, apartment 802 in South Fulton. At that time, Ms. Vassar stated that her live-in boyfriend, the defendant, had been drinking and has a substance abuse problem with alcohol, and pushed her down onto the bedboard, and that caused serious bruising on the right side of her face, which was observed by officers on that date. And for that particular case, the state is asking for a $5,000 surety bond, no contact with the victim, stay away from the incident location, and no alcohol, drugs, or weapons. Due to the defendant's, he does have an assault conviction on his record, so he does have a prior conviction of violence, along with this case and the other case that's on the calendar. Because of what we know about the cycle of violence, the defendant poses a risk of reoffending due to the nature of these charges. So that's the basis for the recommendation for a bond on this charge. Did you want me to go forward with the other charge?
No, I'm familiar with both the bonds. If you just give, the warrants, I understand that the September 2021 incident involves Ms. Janae as well.
That's correct. It's the same victim,
Right.
Visible bruising on each charge, and
Just can't
alcohol is involved
recall.
on each.
I can't recall if it was the same location. One was at West Chase something and,
It was the same location, Your Honor.
okay. All right, so you're asking for $5,000 on each?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Parker, what is your recommendation?
Okay, Your Honor, I acknowledge that there appear to be two open cases on Mr. Bruton for the same individual. We ask that based on the fact that he resides in a new address over on Ivy Ridge Circle, he has no reason to go back to that address anymore, has no reason to make contact with this individual. He will appear in court. He's not a flight risk. He resides here in Georgia. He's been at that address for a year and a half. He also has from Claxton, Georgia, where he grew up. So he will appear for all in all appearances, Your Honor. He's not going to make any contact, intimidate witness, or commit any other crimes if he's allowed to be on bond. And we acknowledge the $10,000 amount for both combined. That's fine, Your Honor.
So you agree to the $10,000?
That's correct, Your Honor.
All right. Bond is set on $5,000 on each count. It's a total of a $10,000 surety bond. He is to have no further contact with Ms. Lamar Janae Vassar. He's to stay away from the West Chase location, and no illegal drugs, no alcohol, and no weapons are allowed. If he owns any firearms or weapons, he's to surrender them to the authorities. His next court date will be November 3rd, 2022 at 9 a.m. in courtroom G33 at 160 Prior Street. If he still is in custody, we will address those cases via Zoom from the jail facility. If he's released on bond, then we will send notice of another court date to his address. Mr. Parker, I would recommend that you contact the clerk's office and update us with his new address so that he will receive summons to appear in court. I don't see an entry of appearance yet, so
I'll do that, Your Honor. I was having a problem getting on the platform because I just got retained last night.
Okay. All right.
I'll do that
That
today.
concludes the cases then. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Your Honor. Am I excused?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
What is your right?
We need to see the crimes that we found out. Next, Your Honor, we have in front of you Mr. Armani Bogan, position number 1.
Mr. Armani Nairi Bogan, case number 22 CR 007118E, is accused of battery domestic violence from July 7, 2022. Mr. Bogan, you've been advised of your right to remain silent, and your attorney is Ms. Rachel Jenks. Any priors on?
Judge.
Hello, Ms. Jenks. Yes, hello. Any priors on Mr. Armani? Mr. Bogan?
No, first arrest.
All right, thank you. Recommendation from Ms. Saleh?
Yes, Your Honor, the state is recommending a $5,000 surety bond no contact with the victim, Ariel Stevens, ARIELSTEPHENS. 1-day anger awareness if given a signature bond, and no alcohol, drugs, or weapons. I'm not sure what amount of the facts were included in the warrant, Your Honor, but we did receive a police report on this case. So on July 7th of 2022, Officer Jean Pierre and Officer Taylor with the Atlanta Police Department were dispatched to a domestic call. The victim in the case, Ariel Stevens, said that an altercation started at a Hilton hotel at 3342 Peachtree Road in Atlanta, Georgia, with her and the defendant being her live-in boyfriend at the time. The altercation started at that location, but they began to drive away from that location in near Roxborough Road and East Paces Ferry in Atlanta. While the two were inside of the vehicle, the defendant began slamming the victim's head against the steering wheel of the car. The victim had to jump out of the vehicle and flag down a Good Samaritan on the side of the road in order to get away from the defendant and call the police. The police were called out and the defendant fled the scene, so he was not on the scene at the time.
Do you know
the
if they
victim-
still, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I've actually read through that one paragraph warrant and long paragraph warrant, let's put it that way. Do they still live together? Do you know, or has?
Judge, I've spoken to Mr. Bogan. They actually, first of all, he denies all of the allegations, but he also said that they never lived together. They do not live together currently. They didn't live together before, and they have no contact. He lives with his mother. He did give me that address, which is in
And
Atlanta.
she's never lived with him and his mother?
That's correct. That's my understanding. He said they have never
That's
lived
going to be
together.
interesting then. Very interesting. Okay.
And Your Honor, just for the record, we have not had any contact with the victim as of yet.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Ms. Jenks, and I have a Birmingham, Alabama address on Mr. Bogan. Does he have a Georgia address?
He does, Judge. I spoke to him about that. He's from there originally, Your Honor. He has actually been living in Atlanta since 2016. He's 24 years old. He is a high school graduate. And he works at Great Escapes Landscaping Company. He's been doing that for about 5 years. He does live with his mom, and I have a current address if you needed that, Judge.
Yep, you can put it in the chat to
I
Ms.
will.
April.champion@FultonCountyGA.
Okay, he also has a brother who's just a little older than him, at 25 years old, living in Buckhead here in Atlanta. We're asking Your Honor to allow him to have a UJR through pretrial since he qualifies.
Right, it's going to be a $5,000 signature bond through pretrial services. He's to have no further contact with Nell Stevens, which means he has to stay 200 yards away from her wherever she happens to be physically located, whether it's her address, her place of employment, on the sidewalk, wherever she is, there has to be a 200-yard gap. And if he doesn't know that, that's the length of 2 football fields.
Yes, Judge.
He's not to contact her through a phone, through a computer, through a third party, or even discuss her on social media. No illegal drugs, no alcohol, no weapons, and no firearms. He will be subject to random screens by pretrial services. He's to report to pretrial services every month until further order of the court. And while he's out on bond, he'll be required to undertake a 1-day anger awareness program. Next court date will be sent to his address as soon as Ms. Jenks updates us with his address.
I just sent it, Judge.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Next is Mr. Chapman.
That is correct, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Zaquan Chapman is 22 CR 007-121F, accused of simple battery domestic violence. This is position number 4. Mr. Chapman, you've been advised of your right to remain silent, and your attorney is Ms. Jenks. Any priors, Ms. Roberts?
He has 1 prior arrest from January 22nd of 2021. And that is for 2 counts of armed robbery, 2 counts of aggravated assault, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a crime. That case number is 22 SC 182-932.
182
932.
932. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Select,
Your Honor, the state is requesting a $5,000 surety bond, no contact with the victim, Sakithia Pitts, Sakythia Pitts. Stay away from the incident location, 4375 Cascade Road, apartment M178 in South Fulton. No alcohol, drugs, or weapons. Due to the nature of the charges and him also being arrested for armed robbery, the state would argue that he poses a risk of reoffending. The victim in this case was also 6 months pregnant at the time. So due to that, the state would be recommending that $5,000 surety bond.
all right, thank you. And Ms. Jenks, what are you, is that your client?
Yes, Judge. Yeah, we're asking Your Honor to, if you're inclined not to give him any kind of signature bond, to give him a bond that's less than 5,000, maybe a 2,000 or 2,500. That was his the mother of his child at the time. The child has been born. They do hope to actually have both parents in the child's life. Mr. Chapman has finished 11th grade at Douglas High School. He's working on getting his GED. He's been a resident of Atlanta his entire life. He was working at Amazon up until this arrest, Judge, doing picking and packing and shipping through Amazon for about the past 2 months. He does have significant ties to the community. There's no need for him to go back to that address, and we're fine with the no further contact order if the state has had contact with the alleged victim in the case. But otherwise, we'd also like to have a third party transfer so that he can maintain his relationship with his child. And I do have a new address for him. He lives in Grayson, Georgia.
All right. Bond is going to be set at 3,500. It is going to be a good bond. And I'm not certain what's the status of his bond in the felony case. He did receive a substantial bond on
He
January.
made the bond, Judge. I spoke to him about that, actually.
So no further contact with the victim. Stay away from the incident location. No illegal drugs, no weapons, no firearms. Next court date is November 3rd. Thank you.
Judge, before you move further into the calendar, I just wanted to inquire about Mr. Covington. He was on the pull sheet, Judge Lull, and also I spoke to him in preparation for today's court session. It was an obstruction charge. When we saw that he wasn't included on the calendar, both Daryl and I had emailed, the clerk and also the jail to find out what's going on and why he wasn't brought. I did ask the deputy to bring him back to the courtroom there at the jail, but if you can inquire from the state as to or why he's not on the calendar.
Oh, what's his full name?
It's Royce Covington, Judge.
I don't have him on the calendar. I'm not privy to the pull sheet. So Ms. Salette, you ring a bell? Royce Covington?
Your Honor, we also saw that he was on the poll sheet. The case has been accused, and it looks like the one charge and warrant he came in on, he has a bond on. I'm not sure why it needs to be heard. I'm just unclear. I did send an email asking.
What's the case?
clarification.
What's the accusation number?
One moment, Judge. Actually, I don't have his accusation, and the state will
Oh.
have it because it wasn't on the calendar, but there is,
I think-
there's a
yeah.
CR number.
I know, Miss Allen said it's been accused, so I just need
Correct.
the accusation number.
It's 22 CR 007116.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Judge, I'm happy to respond to Miss Allen when you're ready.
Yeah, go ahead. I don't see that he made bond unless the jail has some other information on it, but go ahead, Ms. Jenks.
Yeah, that's my understanding too, Judge. I'm not understanding why the state is saying that they don't understand why he needs to be addressed this morning. He's in the same position as every other person on this morning's calendar where his case has been accused and then he's being considered for bond. He actually was recommended through pretrial in their pretrial report that was supplied this morning for a UJR. He's got one count of obstruction, which frankly, Judge, if you read the police or the warrant, you will see it's a very thin case. I have some other comments about that, but he has no priors, and I would be asking Your Honor to go with pretrial's recommendation for a signature bond. That is,
Well, I'm going to pause right now because I do see that he does have a warrant for obstruction, and if that's not the individual I have in the seat right now, is that who's that in the seat?
This is Mr. Covington, Your Honor.
Oh, I see. Okay, Miss Allen, any objection with me proceeding with his case?
No, Your Honor, and just for further notice, I was simply responding to the fact that I was given information that his case needed to be addressed, but I wasn't given information about what specifically the issue was.
No harm, no foul. Here he is. 22 CR 007-116, State of Georgia versus Royce Covington, accused of, and the accusations are as follows: 2 counts of willful obstruction of an officer. That's count 1 and count 3, and count 2 is criminal trespass. These accusations were filed today. Mr. Covington, you have a right to remain silent. Anything you say about the facts of this case brought against you, your statements can and will be used against you. You have a right to an attorney, and representing you is Miss Rachel Jenks. So, Miss Roberts, have you had an opportunity to pull up Mr. Covington's priors, if any?
He doesn't have, this is his first arrest.
All right. And Miss Allen or Miss Salette, if y'all either one would like to address a bond for the 3 charges. I do see a warrant for 1 obstruction. So
I was just going to ask Your Honor if you have some other paperwork, because I only saw one warrant for 1 count of obstruction. So I'm surprised that you said there's a criminal trespass and a second obstruction, even based on the facts in this 1 arrest affidavit.
okay. Miss Allen, what's the bond recommendation for the accusations your office has brought forward?
We would ask for a $3,000 bond. We defer to your judgment about what kind of bond that is. He did have 1 count or 1 warrant, and we have moved forward with 3 charges.
Understood. All right. And I do apologize since this case wasn't on my calendar. Just give me. All right, does Mr. Covington still live at the Mill Creek location?
He does not, Judge. I have an address for him in Snellville. I can provide that to Ms. Chapman.
All right, it's going to be a $3,000 signature bond through the jail, and it's going to be $1,000 on each count. And he's to stay away from 42308 Mill Creek Avenue in Alpharetta, Georgia. He's not to return to that location. A quick read of the warrant appears that he's already retrieved his belongings.
That's correct. He's got nothing left there. I actually confirmed that, Judge. Okay. And I'm just wondering, are you dismissing the 2 charges for which there's no
I've just put a signature bond through the jail.
Okay.
On that one. But since I do have a warrant for 1 of the charges, I'm imposing a restriction that he stays away from that location. No illegal drugs, no weapons, and no firearm. And he needs to update the court with his new address, because we will send him notice of when to show up to court next. And if he fails to show up, a bench warrant will be issued for his arrest. Mr. Covington, this is an active criminal case against you with 3 separate charges. You can sign up for your bond today, but you need to make sure that you're diligent about responding to court summons and show back up in court. Understood?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Judge. That actually concludes my business.
Oh, really? That was it? Okay. I wonder if you wanted it addressed first.
Oh, no, actually, no, we have Mr. Oh, no, that's it. Yeah, that was it.
All right. Okay, thank you. That was.
Thank you, Judge.
Bond through J. All right, moving on to Antoine Manning. Is this Mr. Manning?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Manning, your case is 22 CR 007-122D. Mr. Manning has been accused of DUI, driving under the influence of alcohol, let's say, from October 21st, 2022. Mr. Manning, you've been advised of your right to remain silent, and your attorney is
Gerald Coleman. Good
Mr.
afternoon.
Coleman. Good afternoon, sir. Okay, so let's hear about any possible priors, Ms. Roberts.
Yes, 3 prior arrests, all out of Illinois. Last arrest was April 1st of this year for theft by deception. Out of Illinois, there is no disposition listed. He doesn't have any convictions on his GCSE.
All right. Is that an open case for the theft by deception?
The disposition just lists direct file with court. So
Okay.
it appears to be open.
All right, thank you. Mr. Segura, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
All
The
right.
state's recommendation for this case would be a $5,000 surety bond, no alcohol, drugs, and weapons, and no driving unless it is for work, medical needs, or emergencies. As your honor knows, this is a DUI case in which that when police found the defendant, he was already involved in an accident. And the police found that he had alcohol on his breath. So besides having alcohol on his breath, the defendant was unable to follow the instructions of the officer. He was unable to stand in a quiet position, unable to walk, and unable to keep balance. Based on the nature of this accusation, as long we are asked for a surety bond, and we also concerned mainly because of the defendant's lack of community ties. As Petras noted, he does have an arrest record from Illinois, and in fact, his most recent was from April of 2022 for the theft by deception, which is an open case. So we are concerned about him being a flight risk. And not only that, he also has outstanding warrant from 1 month ago, September the 22nd of 2022, for possession of a stolen property. So based on these facts, we're asking for this surety bond.
Is that the College Park hold or what?
Yeah, I believe so it is.
All right, thank you. Mr. Coleman?
Yeah, I'd be requesting a signature bond on lieu of that, a low bond from Mr. Manning. He is 48 years of age. He's lived here in Atlanta for the last 3 months. He is employed at Hertz Rental Car. He does have his GED. He is the father of 1 child, age 17. I only heard, again, 3 priors in his history out of Illinois, no prior DUIs. Again, I would be requesting a signature bond. Just 1 moment. I don't believe that I read in the warrant that this was actually an accident.
I didn't see one, so that was news to me. Mr.
It's in-
Segura, is this from an incident report?
It is. When you read the full sentence, it says in the beginning, Nate put it up.
We both may have missed it. Oh. Was it a single vehicle accident or was it a collision with another vehicle?
At this point, we only have the warrant, so we're not exactly sure as to what type of accident. It just says on the second sentence that the individual in question was involved in a motor vehicle accident.
Yeah, but again, it doesn't give any details.
Okay, understood. So Mr. Coleman, so you're seeking a
Seeking a signature bond from Mr. Manning, of course, or in lieu of that, a low bond. Again, he has very limited criminal history, no convictions, no prior DUIs that I heard read off.
Okay. And does he still live at Malibu Drive?
That's the address in Atlanta, yes. He's a recent,
I have a
recently
Marietta
relocated here.
address. Is that the Marietta address?
Yes.
Okay, if that's his current address, then notice will be sent to him. Unless he, if he makes bond. His bond currently is going to be $2,000. It is a surety bond. He is to, his next court date will be November 3rd. If he makes bond, then he will be given an alternative court date and it will be mailed to him at his current address. No illegal drugs, no alcohol, and no weapons and no firearms. And he can only operate he can only operate a car if he has a valid driver's license or driving privileges from the Department of Driver Services, adequate insurance and proper registration. So, Mr. Coleman, I guess you need to advise him on the appeal procedures on his driver's license because it will be suspended 30 days from the 21st.
I will. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you.
Come on.
All right, the next one we have is Christopher Maxey. We have two cases for Mr. Maxey. All right, Christopher Maxey is got two separate cases. The first one is 22 CR 007-123H, accused of theft by taking from October 10th, 2022. The second case is obstruction of a law enforcement officer under accusation 22 CR 007-126H from February 2nd, 2022.
Yeah, for the record, I was unaware of the second charge. I don't have any information on that warrant.
Okay, these are the two separate cases that have been accused by the Solicitor General. Mr. Maxey, you have been advised of your right to remain silent, and your attorney is Mr. Darrell Coleman. Ms. Roberts, any priors on Mr. Christopher Maxey?
He has two prior arrests. The last arrest was the willful obstruction from February. And then the first arrest was a disorderly conduct, which he completed pretrial diversion, and it was dismissed in April
Okay.
this year.
All right. Mr. Segura, any recommendation?
For the first case, which is the death by taking, the state's recommendation is to retain the $1,200 surety bond that is already in place. And we are also asking for an alcohol, drugs, and weapons, and a stay away from the Chick-fil-A that's located at 5180 Windward Parkway, Alpharetta. Our recommendation here is based on the facts that a defendant stole a meal costing around $40.59 from Chick-fil-A. And well, I could also address the second case. For the obstruction of a law enforcement officer, this was a February 2022 case in which, as your honor knows, I could also speak for the PD since he hasn't read the warrant. It was a case where there was a woman who was suspected of stealing someone else's credit card and using almost $466.42 on it. And it was in a Walmart that was located at 9070 Mansell Road, Roswell. In this case, when police came to arrest the woman, that's when the defendant came up, said that he was that suspect's stepfather, and said that her name was Tamia Jackson. And at a later period in time, police got warrants that confirmation that the suspect's real name was, in fact, Umanique Peters. So because of this case, we're asking for a $1,000 surety bond, alcohol, drugs, and weapons, and a stay away from that Walmart at the 9070 Mansell Road Walmart at Roswell.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's with the obstruction charge.
Yes.
Okay,
Our main concern here is that the defendant has possible risk of reoffending, as this first case was in February and his recent case was in October. We see that he has been arrested in such short period of time. It's just a major concern in our part.
okay. So this was from February 2nd. I see that he was arrested on February 12th and released on February 13th on a UJR on that same charge in 22 CR 007-126H. So
Is this case on the calendar in error then?
this one should have been further notice. So I'm
I
just
think
gonna-
that that's what the announcement would be. If he's already been arrested and received a bond on that charge, he's just getting notice at this point that it's been accused and it's also an active case.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, so
On
we would
the,
just-
yeah, so the only case that is brand new right now is the theft by taking. I'm going to issue a $1,500 signature bond through pretrial services. And he's to stay away from the Chick-fil-A at Wynwood Parkway, 5180. He's not to return to that location. And his next court date will be sent to him at his current address. And if he doesn't show up in court, he risks the bonds that are issued in this case as well as in the obstruction case. Ms. Champion, we're going to further notice both these cases.
You know, do you know what the bond is on the obstruction charge? What his
It
bond
was
set at?
a UJR, so whoever just wrote UJR didn't specify an amount.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And this
But
is-
he will be
this
required to
bond-
report to pretrial once a month. Next case, Officer Norris, is that
That's gonna be Mr. Norris.
Mr. Joshua Norris? Okay, thank you. Mr. Norris's case number is going to be 22 CR 007-129J, accused of theft of services on October 21st, 2022. Mr. Norris, you've been advised of your right to remain silent. Your attorney is going to be Mr. Coleman.
Well, actually, Your Honor, before we begin with Mr. Norris, I did speak to him this morning. He advised me that he actually has a private attorney, Thomas Florio, on this case, that he has retained Mr. Florio. I was able to locate a number for Mr. Florio. I did call and leave a message for him this morning. I don't know if he ever called back to the courtroom. He did not return a call to me, but because Mr. Norris is representing that he does have private counsel, I cannot represent him this morning. I advised him that if he had private counsel retained and that counsel was not present this afternoon, that his case unfortunately would need to be reset.
Your Honor, if I may?
All right, Mr. Norris, you have a right to remain silent. Anything you say about the facts of the case, your statements can and will be used against you. So I recommend that you stick to the subject of your attorney. Go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor. My attorney is retained under my father. He's a family lawyer. So it's actually under my father's jurisdiction because the lawyer is unaware of anything right now. That was what I was trying to tell Mr. Darrell here before we got off the phone with each other. So I was still telling him that he should be able to still represent me.
Well, so are you saying that Mr. Florio is representing you or he is not representing you?
He is not representing me. He's retained under my father as a family lawyer. I didn't
Okay.
elaborate that to you when he was on the phone, so I'll get the issue. But
We can do Mr. Norris's case, but it would need to be at the end because again, I did not complete interviewing him since he told me that he had private counsel.
All right, Mr. Norris, we'll have to deal with your case after you've had a chance to speak to Mr. Coleman.
And Judge, if you want to just, move things faster, I'm happy to go in a breakout room with him. And I have his information here.
Any problem deferring it to Ms. Jenks, Mr. Coleman?
You want me
No
to do that
problem.
too?
Thank you, Rachel.
Sure.
All right,
Hey, Ms. Jenks, can you
Rachel,
call
you-
extension 22392?
yeah,
We
you're
won't
gonna
have
have
to go to a breakout.
Oh, great. Say it again.
22392.
404-612-2392. All three of us know the number.
Okay, I'll give you guys a call now. Thank you,
Thank
Judge.
you. All right. Next case I have is William Willis.
Come on.
Mr. Willis's case is 22 CR 007-124E. He's accused of willful obstruction of an officer, simple battery against an officer, and criminal trespass from October 21st, 2022. Mr. Willis, you've been advised of your right to remain silent, and your attorney is Mr. Coleman. Ms. Roberts, any priors, please?
He has 9 priors, 6 out of Georgia, 3 out of Florida. Last arrest was September 1st, 2021 for disorderly conduct out of Fulton County. He does appear to be on probation out of DeKalb County for 2 counts of battery, family violence. Disposition date was February 23rd of this year, 12 months probation. He has a 2016 conviction for 2 counts of willful obstruction and simple battery. A possession of drug equipment conviction from 2016 out of Florida. 1 FTA from 2016 out of Florida, and then 1 probation violation from 2019, and nothing further.
Thank you. Ms. Allen, excuse me.
This is my case, Your Honor.
Oh, okay, sorry, Mr. Segura, yes, okay, go ahead.
And for this, we'll have a recommendation of a $4,000 surety bond. That'll be $1,000 for the willful obstruction, $2,000 for the simple battery against a police officer, and $1,000 for the criminal trespass. And we also have the conditions of a 1-day anger awareness and a stay away from Malta, located at 70 Hamilton E. Holmes Drive, Northwest Atlanta. As everyone knows, this is a case in which a defendant was on a bus and was told to leave, but he refused, and got to the point where the bus operator had to contact the police, and the police asked the defendant to leave, but he wouldn't, and when the defendant got up, he ended up hitting the shoulder against the chest of the police officer, and then at that point, he resisted arrest and was arrested. Our main concern here is that the defendant has multiple cycles, and he is being a danger to the community. In this case, in 2016, he has simple battery guilty conviction. In 2017, he was found guilty of obstruction and opposing law enforcement on duty with animal or human bodily fluids. Alongside, he also has a 2021 battery family violence guilty conviction, and he has his recent 2021 disorderly conduct, which is an open case. Alongside, we're also concerned that he could be a fact risk, as he does have a FTA out of Florida from 2016. So we're concerned that he is out on bond, that he will not show up. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Coleman?
Your Honor, I will be requesting a signature bond or in lieu of that, a low bond for Mr. Willis. He is 30 years of age. He has resided here in Atlanta, Fulton County for the last 8 years. He is a graduate of Atlanta Tech. He is currently employed as a forklift operator at Deltman. He has very little money to post for bond. Again, I'm aware of his criminal history, but I will be requesting signature bond on lieu of that, a low bond for Mr. Willis. I will remind the court at this time that these are just allegations.
Understood. It'll be $500 on each count. That's a $1,500 surety bond. He's to stay away from all MARTA buses. And that's all MARTA until further order of the court. No illegal drugs, no alcohol, and definitely not a MARTA. No facility allows you to bring either drinking alcohol on any of these facilities, allegedly, and no weapons. Next court date's November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, is this Shakur Wright?
Yes.
This is case 22 CR 007125G. Shakur Wright, shall I address you as Mr. Wright?
Yes, that's okay.
Okay, so Mr. Wright, your charge is battery domestic violence from June 6, 2022. You have been advised of your right to remain silent, and your attorney is Mr. Darrell Coleman. Any priors, Ms. Roberts?
No, this is first arrest.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Segura, what's your recommendation?
The state's recommendation is a $5,000 surety bond, 1-day anger awareness, no alcohol, drugs, and weapons, a stay away from the 1504 Noble Creek Drive, Northwest Atlanta, and no further contact with Kareem Lovejoy. Kareem spelled K-H-A-R-E-E-M, Lovejoy, L-O-V-E-J-O-Y. As Honor knows, this was a domestic violence case in which the defendant ended up attacking and assaulting Mr. Lovejoy, in which the defendant ended up punching him in the face, which resulted in a lump on his forehead as well as an abrasion to his forehead. My main concern here is of intimidating witness, as at that point in time, Mr. Lovejoy was the defendant's boyfriend and had been living together for 4.5 years. We spoke to Mr. Lovejoy earlier today, in which he said that they have since broken up and they are no longer in a relationship, and that he actually wants to have their charges dropped. But at the same time, this is a concern for us since this was a domestic relationship and does not mean that there won't be a future point in which a defendant may contact Mr. Lovejoy or they can actually rebuild the relationship. Alongside, just because Mr. Lovejoy wants to have charges dropped does not change that this incident did happen in which he did receive visible injuries.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Mr. Coleman, did you want to speak first? I see Mr. Kareem Lovejoy on the screen. If he wanted to address the court, he's more than welcome to do so. Otherwise, we can move on to the defense argument.
I'm prepared.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I will be requesting a signature bond from Mr. Wright. As you heard, this is his first arrest, so he has no criminal history. He is 24 years of age. He has resided here in Atlanta for the last 6 years. He is a student at Georgia State University. He is currently employed at Elaine Sterling Institute as an esthetician. Again, I remind the court that these are just allegations against Mr. Wright at this time. No criminal history. We will be requesting a signature bond.
Bond is set at $3,000. It's a signature bond through pretrial services. Mr. Wright, you can go ahead and sign up for your bond, but you have to have no further contact with Kareem Lovejoy. So even if Mr. Lovejoy invites you to initiates contact, you are under a court order to disregard that contact and make sure that you do not communicate with him in person, through a phone, through a computer, through a third party or social media. Do you understand, sir?
Understood.
You have to stay away from the Noble Creek Drive location. I understood you shared that location for over 4 years. But from now on, you have to stay 200 yards from that location, as well as 200 yards away from Mr. Lovejoy. No illegal drugs, no alcohol, no weapons, and no firearms. Also, while you are out on bond, you will complete a one-day anger awareness program with the Fulton County Pretrial Services. I have an Allison something address. Is that your correct address?
Yes.
All right, so we will send you notice for your next court date. Please make sure you look for that in the mail. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Is Ms. Jenks ready to address Mr. Norris?
She's still on the phone with him, Your Honor.
All right, so while we're waiting, I'm just going to go over the calendar. Mr. Coleman, if you want to make notes for Ms. Jenks. For position 1, Bogan is a $5,000 signature bond through pretrial for the notice. Position 2 and 3, Bruton, they are 5,000 surety each. And further, reset to November 3rd. Position 4, Chapman, is a 3,500 surety, reset November 3rd. Position, then we had Royce Covington, and that's a $3,000 signature bond through the jail for the notice. Then we have Antoine Manning, that's a 2,000 surety bond, reset November 3rd. Position 6 is Christopher Maxey, theft by taking, a $1,500 signature bond through pretrial. Position 7 has already been accused and addressed at first appearance, and he obtained a UJR. So that's going to be further notice along with position 6. Position 8, Mr. Norris is still pending. Position 9, Willis is a 1,500 surety bond for the notice to November 3rd. Position 10, Wright is a 3,000 signature bond through pretrial for the notice. Okay, we are ready to address Mr. Norris's case. Ms. Jenks? Officer Norris, if you have till, Officer Vogel, good.
How we doing?
Sorry.
Wait a minute. I didn't like that, Your Honor. You see Bogle, then you go good.
I
wasn't
know
so
I
good
heard
then.
your voice. I know I heard your voice, but he walked into the screen. He walked to the screen just as I said Norris, so I do apologize.
I'll represent him if he needs.
Okay, there we go. All right, we are addressing Joshua Norris and case number 22 CR 007-129J. Mr. Norris has been charged with theft of services. Initially he was charged with theft by deception. But in this particular case, Mr. Norris, you've been advised of your right to remain silent, and your attorney is going to be Ms. Rachel Jenks. Ms. Roberts, did you get a chance to get any priors on Mr. Norris?
Yes,
All right.
he has 12 priors. Last arrest was June 4th of this year for false statements or writing, concealed facts or fraudulent documents in matters of government, and tampering with evidence out of Clayton County. That case appears to be open. He has a 2017 driving while license suspended or revoked, a 2016 possession of marijuana less than an ounce conviction, and then a total of 3 probation violations, and nothing further.
Thank you. Mr. Segura, this is a theft of services as accused. What is the state seeking in terms of a bond?
For a bond, the state is asking for a $3,000 surety bond for the conditions of no alcohol, drugs, and weapons, a stay away from the Renaissance Atlanta Midtown Hotel, which is located at 866 West Peachtree Tree, Northwest Atlanta, and no further contact with Monica Teplis. Monica spelled Monica, Teplis spelled Teplis. As the owner knows, this is a case in which the defendant was using someone else's credit card, which checked his credit card on his telephone as an electronic credit card to buy the services of a hotel room of the amount of $382.90. Our main concern is that the defendant does have multiple cycles, and which is kind of similar to the one we have now. For example, the one in June in 2022, false standard of writing, as well as 2019 forgery in the second degree, forgery for an actual transaction card, in which he received a false offender status. So because of this, we're asking for the surety bond.
Okay, thank you.
And Judge, I'm a little confused because the only thing I see in the paperwork, unless it was updated, is an affidavit of arrest for theft by deception. So actually,
They've amended the charge.
I understand that, but there's actually no warrant for that. So I'm asking you for a signature bond for this case. He denies the allegation. He said that the credit card was, the reservation was actually made by his cousin. He wasn't aware that there was anything related to any kind of theft of a credit card related to this woman. I'm not even sure if the conditions that the state is asking for is relevant based on the amended charge for which there's no affidavit of arrest or probable cause. It's kind of all, upside down as far as I can tell. But with that being said, Judge, for purposes of bond, Mr. Norris is a high school graduate. He did go to Lovejoy High School. He has his associate's degree, Judge, in global logistics. He did give me a current address that I can update the clerk with in Hampton, Georgia. He does have a job. He's a full-time job. And in fact, he will not qualify for our services after today. And I have advised him of that, Judge. He works as a search engine analyst with Google. He's been doing that for about 4 years. His father is here in town and he does have friends for which I'm going to contact. But again, we're asking you for a signature bond through the jail for this case.
All right. So just for the record, Mr. Joshua Norris initially announced that there was a representation that he had private counsel. And now he has amended that to indicate that he did not retain counsel. He has not had private counsel representation, and that in fact, he wanted the services of the public defender's office for purposes of the initial appearance.
Correct,
That be
Judge.
correct, Mr. Norris?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. So for only the purposes of initial appearance, the public defender's office is representing you. As Ms. Jenks has indicated, after today, you apparently do not qualify for their services, so you would need to retain private counsel from this point onwards.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Your bond is set at $3,000. It is a surety bond. You are to have no further contact with Monica Telenas, I think was the spelling. I'm not sure. And you are to stay away from the Atlanta Renaissance Hotel on West Peachtree Street. If you return to that location, or if you have any financial transactions with that particular hotel that the hotel notifies the authorities, you will run the risk of having a bench warrant issued for your arrest and your bond being revoked. You're not to consume any illegal drugs, no alcohol, and no weapons and firearms. And your next court date will be November 3rd. If you do make bond, then your new court date will be sent to you at your current address. So it's very important that you come back down to 160 Prior Street, Fulton County State Court, to the Clerk's Division, and update us with your current address. Do you have any questions?
No, Your Honor. So you're saying I don't have signature bond, it's just a regular cash bill?
That would be correct. Your next court date is November 3rd, if you are still at the Fulton County Jail.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Jenks, I've already gone through the calendar, so Mr. Coleman will keep you up to date, and that concludes.
Hold on, give me 1 second, Judge, because if you sign off, I'm just sending his updated address to
Ms. Champion? Okay.
yes, Ms. Champion. Give me 1 second. Before you sign off. Okay, done. Thank you so much, Judge.
All right, no problem. You all have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend.
Great weather.
Judge.
Take
I'll
care.
call you in a minute, Rachel.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you,
Thanks.
All right,
everyone.
thank you.
Be safe.
Bye, guys.